Every time I come up to introduce somebody, it's always been after 3 or 4 very powerful, integrative, very deep presentations, and our next speaker is no exception. Phillip Lindsay has been, I think of him as a peripatetic esotericist. He really has no home because his stuff is all in lockers right now somewhere on the planet. And he's been traveling, teaching, writing, talking for quite some time, and he's in the middle of a journey that will take him now to the Mideast and to Europe, and eventually somewhere he might call home for a little while. He, if those of you who were here for the astrology, heard a very deep, profoundly detailed, well thought through, and beautifully presented presentation on esoteric history of the world. This is his new focus. Today he'll be carrying on talking about the Aquarian group, new group of world service and their relation to the Aquarian Christ. You're going to love Phillip, and welcome.
Thank you, Sharon. Hi, everybody. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Greetings to all my glorious co-workers. I'd like to start first with a poem from one of my collected poems in this book called The Infinite Revisited. If I can find it. Oh, it's here somewhere. It's gone off into the infinite, I think. Here we go. Sound okay? The infinite visits. I dare not breathe on this stream that flows before me, lest I ruffle its mirror-like beauty, so still, though flowing with sparkling eddies that flash blue, coalescing around the central core. Breathless, I watch, as my heart almost stops beating, whilst the hem of the infinite's gown rushes by. The infinite revisited. There it comes again, stealing my breath away, and like a repentant thief, breathes it back softly on my cheek, whispering, in a voice commanding all other voices, filling me with magnanimous space, engulfing what remains of I. How can I resist the engaging charms of my betrothed? Ah, the vanity of struggle. Resisting the infinite, it comes to be who you truly are. As some of you are aware, I've been travelling for a few months on the road, and I'd just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank a few people who have been my host along the way. Quite a few of you are here today, so it's a good opportunity to do that. First of all, I'd like to thank my friend Patricia Griffiths from Australia, who generously sponsored my Around the World ticket. Patricia up there, thank you. If you'd like to just put your hand up. I know you're very shy about these sort of things. Lynn and Tara have not made it yet, I don't think, but Lynn Heben Street and Tara Douglas, who hosted my stay in Ojai, Northern California. Glenda and Bill Young for their support and their invaluable loan of the car. Sorry about the dent, Glenda. You Americans will insist on driving on the wrong side of the road. To Keith Bailey and his co-workers of AUM in San Diego, in Rancho, Southern California. Anne Summer, my host in Copenhagen, Denmark, who put up with my whinging about the cold and about smoke in public places. Monica Hackberg, from my host in Sweden. Tuija and Michael Robbins, of course, in Finland. Olivia Hansen in Denver, Colorado. Peg Mayota in Madison, Wisconsin. Sarah Traub and Eva Smith in Toronto, Canada. Donna Brown in Washington, or Washington as you guys call it. The Centre for Purposeful Living in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Dr. Jose Becerra for his kind assistance in Atlanta. And the School for the Ageless Wisdom in Arlington, Texas. I would also like to thank the Synthesis Foundation for sponsoring the publication of my books, and of course the University of the Seven Rays, who have made a constant and steady factor of this USR conference for 20 years. It's quite a milestone this year, I think. And creating a global forum for this niche of our particular work. And thank you one and all for your support, and I acknowledge you not only just for my personal reasons, but to help illustrate the degree of group cooperation that is involved in such an endeavour, of the spiritual test that the Master DK discusses in recognising our co-workers on the path. It brings out the best serving capacity in all of us, invokes the spirit of love, and fulfills some of the divine purpose and the greater plan. And I mention this because the esoteric workers in the Ageless Wisdom and occult education are only a small but potent percentage of the new group of world servers. This talk is entitled The New Group of World Servers, Vehicle of the Aquarian Christ. And I think we forget that sometimes. And this small percentage of esoteric workers that is part of the new group of world servers may have some particular responsibilities in stimulating and supporting the other members of this group of world workers. So who or what is the new group of world servers? The Master Dwaj Khul through Alice Bailey tells us. The new group of world servers is composed at this time of all those sensitive and consecrated servers of the race whose objective is world peace, who aim at the establishing of goodwill on earth as the basis for future living and world expansion. Originally, this group was composed of a handful of accepted disciples and consecrated aspirants. Its ranks have been open to all those men of goodwill who are working actively for real understanding, who are willing to sacrifice themselves for the helping of humanity, and who see no separating bar of any kind, but feel alike to the men of all races, nationalities and religions. He goes on to say, members of the new group of world servers and men and women of goodwill must be sought for in every department of life. They will be found among the adherents of all the current ideologies and in political and scientific circles, among the world educators and philanthropists, among the creative workers, the industrialists, in ordinary homes and in the ranks of labour. These men and women of goodwill must be found and organised and thus discover their numerical potency, for it is there. They must form a world group standing for right human relations and educating the public in the nature and power of goodwill. They will thus create a world public opinion which will be so forceful and so outspoken on the side of human welfare that leaders, statesmen, politicians, businessmen and churchmen will be forced to listen and comply. Steadily and regularly, the general public must be taught an internationalism and a world unity which is based on simple goodwill and on cooperative interdependence. So what are the prerequisites to be a consciously functioning member of the new group of world servers? DK says the heart centre must be awakened and linked up with the heart centres of at least 8 other people. Secondly, he says the head centre must be in the process of awakening and the disciple should have the ability to hold the mind steady in the light. And thirdly, he says a creative activity must be found. The person must be active along humanitarian, artistic, literary, philosophic or scientific lines. Hence, there must be some sort of personality integration and alignment. They must have some magnetic, attractive appeal. So, when did this new group of world service come about? Excuse me a minute. DK goes on to tell us that the emergence of a band of conditioning souls under the name of the new group of world servers has been possible since 1925. These souls, because of their point in evolution, because of their stage in unfoldment, and because of their impressibility to the group idea and to the plan, can come into incarnation and begin more or less to work out that plan and evoke a response to it in the human consciousness. So he emphasises this phrase, because of their impressibility to the group idea and to the plan. Of course, 1925 was the date of the Masters Conclave, as Jose was talking about before. And it is said that the inner ashrams moved from the mental plane to the Buddhic plane around about this time. Of course, this was a period of the general recapitulation of the Atlantean conflict some millions of years before. So this was a most momentous time in history from which we have barely emerged. We are still in this period. So what are the dates? 1936 is another date for the new group of world servers that is most important. He says the month of May is one of deepest significance to all who are affiliated with the Great White Lodge, as are all true esotericists, in that the Wesak festival takes place and is of moment and deep import. The period is always one of prime interest and rare opportunity, but the Wesak festival of 1936 was unique, and the Lodge of Masters prepared for it for 6 months. The hierarchy's appeal reached millions and culminated in May 1936 in a planetary effort wherein the Great Invocation, at least the original version of the Great Invocation, was used upon a large scale in most of the countries of the world. So what zodiacal energy conditions this new group of world servers? DK tells us this group, which serves as Aquarius indicates, the group, therefore, which serves as Aquarius indicates, is the hierarchy. The group which is speeded upon the upward way is the new group of world servers. This group is ruled by Taurus. And to it, that divine Taurian energy brings illumination and the attainment of the vision. This group is, figuratively speaking, the bull rushing forward upon a straight line with its one eye fixed upon the goal and beaming light. But what is that goal? Is it not the goal of self-illumination? It is not the goal of self-illumination, for that lies far behind. It is the goal of providing a centre of light within the world of men and of holding up the vision to the sons of men. Let this never be forgotten, and let the new group of world servers realise its mission and recognise the demands of humanity upon it. What are these demands? Firstly, to receive and transmit illumination from the kingdom of souls. Secondly, to receive inspiration from the hierarchy and go forth consequently to inspire. Thirdly, to hold the vision of the plan before the eyes of men, for where there is no vision, the people perish. Fourth, to act as an intermediate group between the hierarchy and humanity, receiving light and power and then using both of these under the inspiration of love to build the new world of tomorrow. And 5, to toil in Pisces at the end of this Piscean age, illumined by Taurus and responsive in degree to the Aquarian impulse coming from the hierarchy. These objectives are not only individual objectives, but the goal for the entire group. All who respond to the life-giving force of Aquarius and to the light-giving force of Taurus can and will work in the new group of world servers, even though they have no occult knowledge and have never heard of their co-workers under that name. Forget this not. Recognition of the successful work of the new group of world servers will be accorded by the hierarchy, and the testimony of the recognition will be the appearing of a symbol in the aura of the group, of the entire group. This is DK speaking still. This will be a symbol projected by the hierarchy, specifically by the Christ. What that symbol will be, it is not for me to say. It is not yet fully earned, and only its dim and uncertain outline can be seen from the level on which the masters work, and not at all from the level on which the group itself works. He says, it is the mark of the Saviour, and it will embody the mark or indication of a new type of salvation or salvage. Up till now, the mark of the Saviour has been the cross, and the quality of the salvation offered has been freedom from substance or the lure of matter, and from its hold, a freedom only to be achieved at a great cost. The future holds within its silence other modes of saving humanity. The cup of sorrow and the agony of the cross are well nigh finished. Joy and strength will take their place. So, what is this symbol? What is this new type of salvage? I say rhetorically. Maybe during the course of the conference we may get some impressions about this. So, like any entity, the new group of world servers as a collective group has a shadow. What constitutes the dweller or the shadow of the new group of world servers? As the new group of world servers is composed of aspirants and disciples, they are ruled collectively by the axis of Taurus Scorpio, which from the redemption viewpoint stand respectively for desire and the death of desire, very broadly speaking. In the exoteric world, one of the main areas of expression for the new group of world servers can be seen in the United Nations, where there has been a slow grinding forward of the UN's mission through the self-interest of certain nations and a fight for funding. Like the Minotaur's maze, the UN and all its affiliate bodies may have become unwieldy and are in danger of losing their way. The UN is a Taurus sun esoterically and a Scorpio sun exoterically. I have some various essays about this. So the harmonising of these opposites occurs through the triangulation of Gemini and the spirit of dialogue. Of course, the exoteric UN chart is a Gemini moon, and it tends to be a bit of a talk fest at times. These type of schisms have been quite notable in the esoteric community over the past year. There have been quite marked divisions between aspirants and disciples who could be seen as the believers versus the knowers. Causes of these rifts have their root in emotional adherence to ideas primarily, compounded by personal pride, separativeness, lack of discrimination, and desire for power. These are all reflective of testings for the second degree, which is really where the world group is at collectively. The ninefold labour of Scorpio, of course, the labour of Hercules, is most instructive in this regard. There have also been tendencies in the past year to polarise with cliques through fear or misplaced loyalties. There have been manifestations of selfish personal agendas influencing major long-term established group projects. Elsewhere, there have been persistent claims by some individuals of their spiritual status as well. So surely by their fruits we shall know them. Humanity is struggling to make important choices in this no man's land Libran period between the two ages of Pisces and Aquarius. Likewise, the precipitation of energies associated with Shambhala and the gradual externalization of the Masters of Wisdom and the Christ is creating a forcing process amongst world disciples. We are indeed in a unique period between the years of 1965 and 2025, where a certain grace has been karmically conferred upon us from Atlantean times, it is said, that will enable many to pass through the door of initiation, those who would not have had the opportunity to do so as individuals at any other cyclic period. Globally, some of the schisms in the esoteric world group have manifested also in various arguments that centre around the veracity of some of DK's unpublished astrological letters. This has been most unfortunate, yet attesting to be sure, and has resulted in the polarising of 2 points of view that may take some time to resolve. Yet it is all good, as modern technology has allowed us to brainstorm and conference these matters online, bringing about an eventual resolution of the pairs of opposites on the mental plane as they express themselves through these polarising groups. Taking Taurus as the generic ruler of the new group of world servers, of which we are all a part, let us consider some of the Taurian glamours and vices with which we will deal collectively, with apologies to any Taurians here in the audience. Bearing in mind that there is a light side to this sign as well, of course. In fact, Taurus is the mother of illumination. Vices and glamours of Taurus. Okay, here it comes. Stubborn, lazy, bull-headed, willful, arrogant, prideful, forceful, intransigent, and uncooperative. The eye doctrine instead of the heart doctrine. Acquisition of ideas and unswerving adherence to them. Overly concerned with money, sex, comfort, and security. Concrete-minded orientation to the form life. The sign of desire, of powerful astral urges. Desire plus concrete mind, kama manas or desire mind. Power and control issues, tyranny or dictatorship in the world of spirituality. So desire mind in Taurus must undergo the death in Scorpio. And Scorpio, of course, is the major sign of testing for the second degree initiation towards which many of those in the new group of world servers are heading. All of us upon the path must be relatively integrated personalities in order to align with the purpose of the soul. Likewise, with the integration of the group personality, in order for it to function according to its sole purpose, whether that is the University of the Seven Rays, the United Nations, or the new group of world servers. Groups go through integration within themselves, and this constitutes a major burning ground for all participants. Perhaps now there is approaching a higher turn of the spiral whereby certain groups must attempt to interrelate and integrate themselves with each other, affecting a larger group integration and representing a higher burning ground. The Master Moya says that one of the keys to the success of such a venture is tolerance. And he says, through Helena Roerich in the Agni Yoga teachings, tolerance is one of the conditions of observation. True observation is the basis of cognition. An intolerant man cannot form a just picture of things. He deprives himself of observation and loses perspicacity. What kind of cognition can be born from egoism which rejects reality? There are many examples of great truths having been subjected to distortion because of intolerance. It may be said that intolerance is ignorance, but this definition will be too mild. Intolerance is evil. There can be no good intolerance. It invariably contains falsehood because it conceals the truth. Only those who definitely lack intelligence can light-mindedly fail to consider intolerance as something unworthy. Unquote. So how can we assist the Aquarian Christ? 1. Walk the talk. Live the teachings as a practice of the applied theory. So many of us are good at the theory, yet fall woefully short of the practice. How big-hearted can we be in emulating the Christ through expansive loving-kindness and inclusiveness? 2. Overcoming the heresy of separativeness. In heart and mind, we must become selfless, harmless, inclusive. Again, all platitudes to some, but something which is constantly violated by many of us. These are at least some second-ray approaches. If the new group of world servers allows chaos and ill will to suffuse their ranks, or lets itself be distracted from the task of service at hand, they fail their given sole brief from hierarchy and forfeit their fellow humanity. The key to being an effective member of the new group of world servers is the transmutation of the lower forces to the higher centres, and we are told that this falls into 2 stages. He says, there are consequently 2 points to be borne in mind as we study the mystic and his difficulties. First of all, the period of awakening and subsequent utilisation of the centres. And secondly, the period of the transference of energy from the solar plexus to the heart, and then from all the 4 centres up the spine to the throat. Prior to the focusing of energy of all the centres in the Ajna centre, between the eyebrows. This centre, the Ajna centre, is the controlling one in the personality life, and from it goes all personality direction and guidance to the 5 lower centres which it synthesizes. So as individual disciples work at the awakening of the Ajna centre, so collectively the Ajna Centre of the new group of world servers awakens and becomes a vehicle for Sanat Kumara, we have been told. Why is the new group of world servers the Ajna Centre of Sanat Kumara, the Lord of the World, or Melchizedek? He tells us the Ajna Centre of the Lord of the World is just beginning to express itself in a recognisable manner through the new group of world servers. This intermediate group between the hierarchy and humanity is a carrier of the energy which makes the plan possible. This plan implements the purpose, and later, when the new group of world servers is organised and is recognised as a living organism, it will definitely receive energy from Shambhala in a direct reception via the hierarchy. This is quite a statement. Are we at that stage yet? Has the new group of world servers been recognised as a living organism yet? Who are they known by exoterically? The United Nations and human rights groups, the cultural creatives, environmental and political groups, ethically sound business groups and corporations, artistic and scientific communities, spiritual groups, and even loosely organised organisms. Yet this stage has probably arrived. Yes, this stage has probably arrived, and yes, those groups are probably receiving energies from Shambhala, a risky proposition for the hierarchy, but nonetheless one which also holds great promise for accelerated evolution. The main risk, of course, lies in the misuse of the will and power for individuals within these groups, or groups as a whole. For the completely uninvolved and selfish groups, the distortion of Shambhala forces works out as tyranny and predator-like behaviour, of course. So this Ajna Centre, the Ajna Centre has two major petals consisting of 48 minor petals each, making 96. Each of those petals could be considered as representing various major groups in the world who are serving the plan. As many of the new group of world servers are at the later stages of the probationary path and the early stages of the path of discipleship, they/we are still at the point of transferring these lower energies into the solar plexus, preparatory to carrying them to the throat and heart centres above the diaphragm. This takes much aspiration, idealism, personality effort, purification and control. However, in the later stages of discipleship, the Ajna Centre becomes more integrated right up to the third degree initiation and relates to integrated and perfected personality expression. The Ajna Centre is the organ of the integrated personality, the instrument of direction. Has this degree of personality integration been achieved within the world groups? And has it been achieved within esoteric groups that are part of the larger new group of world servers? Or are we still struggling towards that point because of schisms and doctrinaire separative belief systems? There are surely several advanced disciples in these groups, perhaps not yet quite enough to sway the balance towards full personality integration for the group as a whole, though this will most likely alter very soon in the Aquarian age, which may witness a massive acceleration of this process. Once personality integration is achieved, what then? Probably one of the most exciting and empowering developments in human history, where the purpose of God will be directly recognised and implemented. Just as an individual awakens to the soul, so humanity will awaken to its true self and be far more self-determining than has hitherto been the case. Think this out. Just as the hierarchy are like the higher self to humanity, so the new group of world servers is the bridge or antikarana which links the two. Students will note, of course, the relation between the Ajna Centre and the third eye, or the bullseye, the eye of illumination over which Taurus rules. The sign which rules the new group of world servers as well. And DK tells us, such is the test of Vulcan, the sole ruler of Taurus. Of the soul fashioning his instrument of expression in the depths, grasping the divine purpose, and so bending the will of the little self to that of the greater self. And 2 points emerge here. Firstly, Vulcan is the ruler of the first ray of willow power and is related to Sanat Kumara and the planetary crown chakra. And secondly, we recall the earlier phrase, when the new group of world servers is organised and is recognised as a living organism, it will definitely receive energy from Shambhala in a direct reception via the hierarchy. This has a direct relation to the above passage, grasping the divine purpose and so bending the will of the little self to that of the greater self. The point of least resistance in the past has been for Shambhala energy to be destructive and over-forceful within the personalities of individuals, though now humanity is supposedly becoming increasingly used to this new type of spiritual force, where we will see far more the constructive aspects of Vulcan's hammer, fashioning his instrument of expression in the depth, so to speak. So, the Christ closely consults with Sanat Kumara, and hence we can see the role of the new group of world servers as the vehicle of the Christ implementing the will of Shambhala. And we may recall Christ anchoring that first tenuous thread of the Shambhala force during those agonised hours in the Garden of Gethsemane. So what are the special cycles for the new group of world servers? DK tells us that it is the task of the new group of world servers to be sensitive to impression of the plan as transmitted from hierarchy and to be able to implement that plan within humanity. And he talks about this 9-year cycle and a 7-year cycle. Firstly, the 9-year cycle. This plan can only be sensed, visioned and known in truth by the hierarchy. Suffice it is for the rest of those in the hierarchy, the initiates and disciples in their ordered ranks and various gradings, to cooperate with that immediate aspect of the plan which they can grasp and which comes down to them through the inspired minds of their directors at certain stated times and in certain specific years. Such a year was 1933. Such another will be the year 1942. At those times when the hierarchy meets in silent conclave, a part of God's vision and his formulation for that vision will be of the immediate present is revealed for the next 9-year cycle. Now to the 7-year cycle. In December 1935, the energies of Capricorn were augmented by the pouring in of forces from a still greater constellation. Most of you are familiar with this quote. Which is to our zodiac what the zodiac is to the Earth. This augmentation will take place again in 1942. By means of this augmentation, during the coming Aquarian zodiacal cycle, groups on Earth can avail themselves of the tide of Capricornian influences which will flow into our radius of registration every 7 years. Note that this 7-year cycle occurred in 1942 at the same time as the 9-year cycle. The one just passed, cycle just passed, gave a tremendous impetus to the work of the new group of world servers and was the cause of the very good reaction in the world to their particular impulse. This worked out in every nation and in every group as a marked tendency to goodwill. In 1942, there will come another planetary inflow of which we are all begged to avail ourselves. Notice that word beg that DK uses, because the successful outcome of this time actually helped change the tide of the war for the Allies' in favour of the Allies. This week of group impact occurring every 7 years will run from December the 21st to December the 28th. And if this should at any time fall at the period of the full moon, the opportunity will be most significant. This possibility must be watched. This week should be regarded as preeminently the festival week of the new group of world servers. So obviously the new group of world servers did avail themselves of those forces. Today, and of course we've just had these 63 years since 1942 in the World Festival Week in Capricorn of December 2005. And at the same time, this 7 times 9 cycle obviously allowed a coincidence of the 9-year cycle as well in 2005. So 2005 was a very important year. Now, we find these 9-year cycles are broken down into 3-year cycles, which I think most of you are familiar with. And DK states, have these dates carefully in mind and thus lay your plans for the future. Thus will you be working with the law and along the lines of least resistance. Make each 3-year cycle conform to the rhythm of creation. In the first year, lay your emphasis upon the activity of the manifesting principle, using that which appears and with which you have to work. In the second year, let the clarity and the quality of the note to be sounded by the manifesting form appear and be heard. In the third year, behind the form and expressing itself through the quality, let the livingness and the work of the indwelling life emerge for all to see. Bear this in mind as you consolidate the work. The keynote of the first year's work is consolidation, that of the second year must be expansion, whilst the keynote of the third year must be the making of a definite impact upon the public consciousness by the sounding and the emphasising of some one clear note. If this cyclic measure is kept thus in mind, no serious mistakes will be made. The new group of world service must work in these 3-year cycles and the foundation of cyclic attainment must be laid. This cyclic rhythm will release from strain and yet enable the workers in the group to feel that there is no failure. It is impossible to do good work where a sense of failure or attainment is found. You are in the process of gathering together your forces for another cycle of activity in connection with the new group of world service. Forget not, all creative processes proceed with a cyclic rhythm. The rhythm set by the new group of world servers is a 3-year cycle, and to this rhythm you will find yourself conforming. So we are now in the first year of the first 3-year cycle of three-year cycles that make 9 that will finish in 2014. Hence 2005 and 2000 to 2006, which is where we are now, is the year of crisis and consolidation, and we lay our emphasis upon the activity of the manifesting principle, using that which appears and with which we have to work. This, of course, relates very much to the 7th ray of ceremonial order. We find ourselves now in Aries 2006 at this conference, ready to implement the new 9-year cycle and 3-year cycle with that which we were impressed by in the new group of World Service Week in Capricorn 2005. Did any of us or a group get, quote, God's vision and his formulation of that vision for the immediate present revealed for the next 9-year cycle? Unquote. God's vision through the intermediary of the planetary logos, Sonic Kamara? I ask the question rhetorically and literally and hand it over to you for your thoughts and impressions. Okay. So, we can discuss that or not, or I can just go and sit down. Well, I should just go and sit down then. Thank you. You going to say something? Okay. Well, you want to discuss it? Can I rephrase the question? Sure. Okay. This relates somewhat to the other question that I phrased before about the symbol over the new group of world servers that was created by the cross. Well, in the new group of World Service Week of Capricorn 2005, we allegedly did our meditations and tried to get in contact with that which was precipitating. So I'm asking the question, did any of us as individuals or as groups get, quote, God's vision and his formulation of that vision for the immediate present revealed for the next 9-year cycle? Are there any ideas about what that could be? Yeah.
I think the theme of this conference is part of that. I was going to say that the theme of this conference, to me, is clearly part of that vision for the next 9 years, and that is the preparation for the reappearance of the Christ.
Indeed,
and it was brought out in the keynote address that the end of that preparation period is 2025. There's not much time left for that whole preparation phase, and that's certainly part of that 9-year period.
Yeah. And this Aries period is a good time to bring about that initiative, at least for this group. Any other ideas?
I'll hold it for you.
I don't know if I got a vision, but perhaps a tiny piece of the vision while I was in Israel this fall, right before the December event. And I was so impressed with the groups that I met there, the Jewish groups, the Sufi groups, the Muslims, the Christians who get together and chant together and pray together and love one another. We don't hear about these things on CNN.
Yeah.
And I came away with hope, a kind of hope that I've never had before. So if Jerusalem is the place of peace where it can happen, then it can happen anywhere. It can happen all over the world.
Sure. That is the problem with consensus media, to be sure. There's a lot of good things going on, a lot of good projects around the world, but we just do not hear about them unless you go online or to our non-American TV channels. Excuse me expressing that. So, yeah. Any other comments? Kathy? No?
I'm not going to speak about a vision for the next 9 years necessarily, but just something I've been thinking about related to the heart. And there's been much said about the heart and love here so far. And as we know, the Tibetan did say that the inactivity of the heart center was the principal failure of his Dhyana group. And I think we all sense that this is a time of the opening of the heart, perhaps particularly within the esoteric group workers. And just one thing to share about that heart opening.
It's so true. Also, I forget what I was going to say. Yeah, Carl, you know.
The next 111 years, I was getting, was also connected with two cycles. Excuse me. A cycle of 63 years, which is another repetition of what took place since 1942, but on a higher turn of the spiral, to be followed by a 48-year rhythm, which can be broken down into a threefold 16-year rhythm to express the three aspects of the primary rays through the collective throat center of humanity in those last 48 years before 2117.
Thanks.
You mentioned early that it's time for us to discover new symbols for us to work with. And oddly, driving over here from California, I saw in the back window of a car a cross. And I thought how irritating that is to me that that's the symbol of Christ. And so last night, or this morning, first thing I wrote down, it's time for us to transform the cross. And I saw someone with some jewelry that it was a equally sided piece of jewelry, and that puts our soul and us in the center, and so it's just shortening that leg of the cross. That's just an intuition I wanted to share because it's time for a new symbol.
Yeah, I'll just reread that quote again to you about that, where he says, "What this symbol will be, it is not for me to say. It is not yet fully earned, and only its dim and uncertain outline can be seen from the level on which the masters work, and not at all from the level on which the group itself works. It is the mark of a saviour, and it will embody the mark or indication of a new type of salvation or salvage." Maybe we could ask this or meditate upon this during the conference.
I know there are always questions, but I'll be Saturn. and we are out of time for this because we'd like to carry on. Thank you so much, Phillip.
Thanks.
It's been wonderful again. And Michael and Keith will be leading our group meditation before lunch.
Thank you. It's so true. Also, I forget what I was going to say. Yeah, Carl, you
The next 111 years, I was getting was also connected with two cycles. Excuse me. A cycle of 63 years, which is another repetition of what took place since 1942, but on a higher turn of the spiral, to be followed by a 48-year rhythm, which can be broken down into a threefold 16-year rhythm to express the three aspects of the primary rays through the collective throat center of humanity in those last 48 years before 2117.
Thanks.
You mentioned early that it's time for us to discover new symbols for us to work with. And oddly, driving over here from California, I saw in the back window of a car a cross. And I thought how irritating that is to me that that's the symbol of Christ. And so last night, or this morning, first thing I wrote down, it's time for us to transform the cross. And I saw someone with some jewelry that it was a equally sided piece of jewelry, and that puts our soul and us in the center, and so it's just shortening that leg of the cross. That's just an intuition I wanted to share because it's time for a new symbol.
Yeah, I'll just reread that quote again to you about that, where he says, "What this symbol will be, it is not for me to say. It is not yet fully earned, and only its dim and uncertain outline can be seen from the level on which the masters work, and not at all from the level on which the group itself works. It is the mark of a saviour, and it will embody the mark or indication of a new type of salvation or salvage." Maybe we could ask this or meditate upon this during the conference.
I know there are always questions, but I'll be Saturn. and we are out of time for this because we'd like to carry on. Thank you so much, Philip.
Thanks.
It's been wonderful again. And Michael and Keith will be leading our group meditation before lunch.
Thank you.